Why is it that losing something leads to more vivid memories and it hurts more than gaining the equivalent amount or situation? This is what we're going to look into in this video. So in this video, we're going to cover the concepts of prospect theory, loss aversion, and reference dependence. The whole idea behind prospect theory was this model developed by Kahneman and Tversky. And essentially what they go through in this model is that there's this situation where you could either gain or lose money. So this would be a situation of zero gain, zero losses down here. So here you would gain, let's say 100, and here minus 100. And then afterwards, this is your level of value or satisfaction. So up here, you're very happy, and down here, you're very unhappy. Typical economic theory would tell us that the more money you gain, you might receive diminishing returns. So it's normal to understand that the first $1,000 that you gain will lead to a lot more satisfaction than the second one, because the more you have of something, the less value you have associated to it. This is still reflected in this. The big takeaway message that wasn't included in the past and other economic models is the fact that losses hurt more than gains. So if I were to draw this out, the kind of shape it would have would be goes up and then it plateaus kind of idea. It could still be going up a little bit higher rate, but when it goes down, it's going down steeper and also kind of plateaus, has this kind of S shape. But if I look at the positive gain associated to $100 in gain versus $100 in losses, well, if I were to lose $100, the losses are much greater in terms of change in satisfaction level. So if you gain a certain amount of money, it leads to a certain level of happiness that goes up. But if you were to lose that same amount of money, your reduction in happiness would be greater. Some studies say that it's like 1.5 to 2 times greater. So let's say you gain $100 or you lose $100 rather, it would be the equivalent of gaining like $150 to $200 in terms of change in satisfaction. Not equivalent in the sense that one's negative and one's positive, but rather the kind of amplitude of it would be similar. So we feel our losses more than we do our gains. And this is the whole idea behind loss aversion. We don't like to lose things. And different examples I could think of in practice that kind of relate to this subject is, have you ever had a situation where you thought you were going to gain something, whether it's a new job, new relationship, a certain amount of money, and all of a sudden you don't gain that amount, you actually lose it. You go back to your initial situation, but in this whole process, your kind of reference scenario, your reference point, which is the center point here, that reference point has changed. You went from a situation that you're living your life, you're content with your life. Then there's this amazing opportunity that arises, whether it's a job, a relationship, money, whatever. This is amazing opportunity that arises and you think you have it. You think it's a done deal. So this becomes your new situation. You foresee your future with those glasses on and you're like, this is going to be my life for the rest of the days. And then for some reason, that option kind of doesn't work out and you go back to your initial scenario. Well, normally when you go back to your initial scenario, that's the life you've had all the past years. So you should be as content as you used to be. But because you had this feeling of going to another kind of level, this becoming your new normal, and then coming all the way back to your initial scenario, you feel that loss more than the gain. So you have a situation that now you don't feel as good about this project, or you don't feel as good about your life. You don't feel as good about the situation that you're in because of that. Whereas on the flip side, if you were to think that you lost your job, your relationship, or something else, and then you kind of come back to that initial situation, then you'll be just kind of, oh, I'm relieved. I'm happy about it. but you won't be kind of like ecstatic about it. So here's an example to help you understand this concept of loss aversion. It's an example where in both situations, you start from the same situation and you end with the same situation, but ask yourself which of the two situations you think you'll be more happy or unhappy with. So there's something that happens with your car and you bring it to the garage. One of two situations can arise. You either expect no warranty to cover anything, like everything is coming out of your pockets, and you've estimated that it's going to cost you $2,000. In the end, half of the work done on your car is covered under warranty, and it only costs you $1,000. That's situation A. If you think that situation B is a situation where you bring your car to the garage, you expect everything to be covered under warranty, and when you go to pick up the car, you realize that half of the work was covered under warranty and the other half was not. So in this situation here, you pay $1,000 for your car repairs. In both situations, you started from a situation of having a car that broke down to a situation where it's repaired. And in both situations, you have $1,000 fee at the end. But which one of the two do you think you'll feel happier with? Well, pretty much everyone would say, I would feel happier with having kind of like the low expectations and then having the situation where I end up paying less than the situation of having really high expectations and then having those expectations crushed at the end. And this can all relate back to this concept of loss aversion and reference dependence. As soon as you expect your reference to be positive, that negative outcome is going to hurt a lot more than when you expect the outcome to be negative. That positive outcome is going to bring you back up and it won't be as hard on you. And associated to that, it's kind of a side subject, could be covered elsewhere as well, is this idea of reference dependence. There's studies that show that when you think about the Olympics or any kind of combination where there's medals associated to the top three people, typically we would see that the gold medalist is happy and the bronze medalist is happy, but the silver medalist is often unhappy when you look at the podium. And what's the reason behind that? Well, the silver medalist sees the amount of extra effort he could have put in and get gold medal, and he wants that. And since he didn't get that, he was taking away the gold and he only gets silver. He's not very happy about it. So the level of happiness or just like satisfaction based on that result is often a lot lower. And it's actually lower than the bronze medalist, which doesn't make sense. You'd rather be second than third. So why is the bronze medalist happy? Well, the bronze medalist, on the other hand, sees that he could have been fourth. A little bit slower and he would have been fourth. And being fourth would have been no recognition, no podium, no medal to show for. But in the end, he just got a little bit better and that gave him a medal. So he compares him to the fourth person and he's ecstatic. Sometimes the bronze medalist on the podium is the happiest person there, just because they feel that they almost didn't make the cut, but they did. So it's something to keep in mind, this idea of reference dependence. And it's something that we often compare ourselves a lot to our neighbors and so on. And it relates to many other subjects. Other things that you could think about is there's different studies that show people's happiness with their homes based on the size, but also based on the relative size to their neighbors and other people. And the typical result coming from that is that you're happier with a small home as long as your neighbors don't have larger homes. So some places you'll see that people are very happy with a home that's only like 700-800 square feet, as long as their neighbors are in that range or lower than them. Compared to a situation where you have 2,000 square feet, but all your neighbors have 3,000, you won't be as happy in that situation than the initial one, because in that situation, you're kind of like the one that's not succeeding as much relative to everyone around you. So that leads to the reference point as well. So reference dependence can be linked to loss aversion and prospect theory, but in this other case here that I was alluding to with the home example, it doesn't really relate to loss aversion or so on. It just relates to what's your reference point. There's loss aversion, there's reference dependence, and the last little concept here that we could kind of glue these together is the endowment effect. The endowment effect tells us that it's harder to part with something that you already have than to pay for something that you haven't had. So let's say you've been accustomed to having anything. Some of the experiments are based on being given a cup and being used to having your own cup. And then how much money would be required for you to part with that cup, to get rid of it, to sell it. And that willingness to accept that amount of money that I'm willing to accept to sell it is often superior than people's willingness to pay to get that cup. And it's not a question of the people who have the cups really value cups and the other ones don't. It's just a question of these people have grown accustomed to having something and they don't want to part with it. And if they were to part with it, they want a larger amount of money. And you'll often notice this in life where some people have had something for a certain amount of time, they value it in a certain way, and then when they go to sell it, they just ask for a price that's just completely out of range, that doesn't make any sense from a market perspective. But it's this idea that they don't want to part with it, they're used to it. So in all, we've learned in this video that losses hurt more than gains. This idea now with the endowment effect that if you had something and you were to part with it, it hurts more, so you typically ask for more money. And all of this depends on what's your reference point. What situation is your reference point? Is your reference point a $40,000 a year salary? Is your reference point having a cup? Is your reference point you were the champion in the past, you were number one in the Olympics and now you're second? What is your expected reference point or your current reference point? And how things fluctuate around that will lead to how happy or unhappy you are with your situation. I hope you guys found this video interesting. I'll catch you on the next one. If you found this video interesting, please consider subscribing or joining my class where I guide you to apply and expand on the information found in these videos to real life examples. Have a good day.